May 17th, 1940. As chaos grips the French High Command and the Germans surge forward, one colonel launches a bold counterattack. He's determined to show how his new ideas on armored warfare can save the French. With less than 100 tanks, he strikes the German flanks and drives towards the enemy's headquarters. Today, Charles de Gaulle goes into battle. I'm Indy Neidell, and welcome to our World War II mini-series 10 Days in Sedan, where we cover the German thrust through the Ardennes, the rage of the Reich, and the new confrontation between old enemies at Sedan, the crucible where the fate of the Axis and Allies converge. Join me as we explore the course of the battle and its aftermath. Last time, the leading armored divisions of Heinz Guderian's 19th and Georg Hans von Reinhardt's 41st Panzer Corps reached the village of Mon Cornet, and the two commanders held a conference to plan their advance on the next French line of defense along the Weiss River. But the rapid advance of the panzers has left the Germans with a long exposed southern flank. Because of this, the man in overall authority here, Army Group A Commander Gerd von Rundstedt, issued a halt order for the panzers. Yet despite this order, the two men have continued to send their divisions forward. In the north, Reinhardt has the 6th and 8th Panzer Divisions. The 6th under Werner Kempf is already well beyond the halt line, and this morning completes its crossings at Poix and Guise. The defeated French tanks withdraw to Le Catelet, pursued by Kempf's forces. The 8th Panzer Division under Adolf Friedrich Kunzen completes its crossing at Hirson and advances to capture the road junction at La Capelle. Among Guderian's divisions, Friedrich Kirchner's 1st Panzer Division completes crossings at Ribemont and Moilly, while Rudolf Fehl's 2nd Panzer does the same at Origny. Now, it is a bit murky whether or not Guderian blatantly disobeyed the halt order. Guderian himself claims that the army group was so slow in getting the orders forward to his headquarters that he received nothing yesterday afternoon. By the time the order finally did arrive after midnight, the 1st Panzer Division was already securing its bridgehead, so the order was obsolete. Regardless of the exact sequence of events, this has landed him in hot water with his boss, Ivon Klest. As commander of the Panzer Group, Klest has been a mediator between the impetuous Guderian and more cautious superiors like Rundstedt and German Army Commander-in-Chief Walter von Brauchitsch. So far, Klest has given Guderian a lot of leeway, but it seems that this unauthorized push across the Weiss River is too far. Klest summons Guderian early this morning. Angry that Guderian had exceeded his remit, at 0700 hours, Klest ordered an immediate halt and flew to Guderian's headquarters at Soise, just east of Mon Cornet, to personally enforce it. During a violent reprimand, Klest accused Guderian of disobeying orders. This altercation caused a crisis of command, during which Guderian resigned, recalled Fehl by radio to have him take charge of 19th Panzer Corps, and informed Rundstedt of his resignation. The Heeresgruppe commander immediately ordered List to go to Soise and defuse the matter. List is 12th Army Commander Wilhelm List. Since the 15th, Panzer Group Klest has, technically at least, been subordinated to List's army. So he comes in and restores Guderian to his position. Guderian is given permission to continue pushing forward strong reconnaissance forces, but he isn't allowed to move his corps command post forward. Those reconnaissance missions will come tomorrow, so for today, Guderian's troops are stuck with their toeholds secured across the Oise River. Failing to cross the river in force today has given the French some time to get their act together from the catastrophes of the 15th and 16th of May. On the 16th of May, there was an approximately 100-kilometer wide gap in the front line. The German panzers, however, were not allowed to push into that gap, and so the French High Command managed once again to stabilize the front line along the Oise and Sambre rivers. That leads to the question as to who is responsible for this fatal halt order. I'll cut a long story short here and tell you it is Adolf Hitler who is responsible. Sure, Klest blew his top at Guderian, but the Panzer Group commander is only reluctantly following orders. Wilhelm List is also really just a relay station. Okay, Rundstedt believes the panzers need halting, and Walter von Brauchitsch certainly agrees, but it is Hitler more than any of the military officers who is most worried about the exposed flanks of the German forces. He believes that these are a political risk as well as a military one, as a successful counterattack by the French risks dealing a shattering blow to German military and civilian morale, while also reinvigorating the French. This is despite the Luftwaffe and the Army's intelligence services rightly assessing that the French do not have the capacity to launch a counterattack that can pinch off the German salient. There's a strange reversal of roles here between Hitler and Franz Halder. During this phase, there was a complete mood swing in two men who were as opposite as Hitler and Halder. It was, of all people, Hitler who, being a gambler by nature, accepted almost criminal risks in his foreign policy adventures, but was suddenly scared stiff by his own courage and found himself at the brink of a nervous breakdown. Halder, on the other hand, suddenly exuded self-confidence and belief in victory, as he confided to his diary on the 16th of May. Our breakthrough wedge is developing in a positively classical manner. The entry on the 17th of May contains the following noteworthy sentence: "A great decision must be taken now." That decision is not made today, though, and Guderian and Deinhard have their freedom of action curtailed. Despite everything, the French are planning a counterattack, although it is pretty much doomed from the start. I'll have to go back to yesterday to give you the full picture. Yesterday evening, Northeast Commander Alphonse Georges gave orders to 9th Army Commander Henri Giraud and 6th Army Commander Robert Touchon. You must first clear the area between the Oise and the Aisne by an operation based on mechanized transport. Then Touchon must follow up this clearing operation by attempting a breakthrough north of the Aisne. The force available to Touchon is the 4th Armoured Division under Colonel Charles de Gaulle. For over a decade now, de Gaulle has been advocating progressive ideas on armored warfare, ideas that have largely been ignored by the French General Staff. De Gaulle had demanded the creation of an operational armored force. What he wrote in 1934 about the future role of tanks seems almost clairvoyant. They will clear the way for tremendous victories. Their swift thrusts, aimed deep into enemy territory, will cause the enemy's collapse, the way the fall of a pillar sometimes can bring a cathedral to the point of collapse. The conservatively oriented General Officer Corps had rejected those ideas. When he was given his command, the 11th of May 1940, just a week ago, Georges therefore told him, "There, de Gaulle, for you who have for so long held the ideas which the enemy is putting into practice, here is the chance to act." De Gaulle certainly relishes the chance to put his theories into action. Georges really only wants to buy some time, though, for 6th Army to establish its new defensive line along the Aisne and Ailette rivers. But de Gaulle has more ambitious plans. His division has assembled around Laon and aims to strike northeast towards Mon Cornet. By seizing the highway junction here, and by taking breakheads across the Serre River, he believes he will be able to interrupt the German lines of communications supplying the panzer forces. On paper, the 4th Armored Division is the most powerful armored unit in the French army, but in reality, unlike the other 3 armored divisions, it is not battle-ready. In fact, it was still being organized when the German attack began, and de Gaulle only has about 90 or 95 ready tanks, plus 1 motorized infantry battalion, another battalion of infantry mounted on buses, and a regiment of 105mm howitzers. Mon Cornet also showcased the limitations of his pickup force, the lack of experience of his tank crews, mechanical difficulties, inadequate fueling capabilities, a lack of radios to coordinate attacks, and an absence of artillery and motorized infantry. Captain René Rive noted that his unit arrived at Mon Cornet guided only by a map taken from the post office almanac. The attack begins about 4:15 in the morning, with de Gaulle sending 2 tank forces northeast towards Mon Cornet. The Germans are not expecting a flank attack here, or anywhere else for that matter, and there's only really a screening force in front of the French tanks. The French heavy tanks, the Char B1s, advance along the main road from Laon to Mon Cornet. In their path sits the airfield at Clermont-les-Fermes, where Guderian and Klest are having their meeting. The tanks shoot up some supply vehicles and easily shrug off the 37mm shells of some PaK-36 anti-tank guns. German troops are soon streaming to the rear for safety, and alarm bells are ringing at Mon Cornet. Meanwhile, the French R-35 light tanks make their advance via Sedan, closing in on Mon Cornet from slightly further south. The town itself is pretty thinly defended, with just a few 88mm flat guns and some rear echelon troops who the Germans hurriedly organize into an ad hoc Kampfgruppe. But then, the same issues that have repeatedly sabotaged the French pop up once more. Char B-1 Biz tanks ran short of fuel before reaching Mon Cornet and spent 4 hours refueling from civilian trucks, which gave the Germans a chance to mine the approaches to the town and press 6 disabled tanks back into service. A frustrated de Gaulle finally urged the R-35 tanks from the 24th Battalion to press on to Mon Cornet, but its 2 companies attacked without any kind of support. These tanks were expressly designed to attack with supporting infantry, not alone into a town. The handful of German tanks and a 3.7 centimeter pack gun repulsed the unsupported R-35 tanks. By the time that the French heavy tanks finished refueling and resumed the attack around 1500 hours, the Germans had managed to deploy the 8.8 centimeter flak battery outside Mon Cornet. Soon thereafter, a Stuka attack inflicted further damage on de Gaulle's tanks, and elements of the 10th Panzer Division began to appear southeast of Mon Cornet. It was time to break off the action. So, the southern wing of Georges' operation has ground to a halt, although it has given the Germans a real fright. But what about the northern part? 9th Army Commander Henri Giraud sends what's left of Brunneau's 1st Armored Division to the Aven-la-Capelle area to ready an attack against the northern side of Guderian's salient. Once again, fuel supplies and mechanical breakdowns take their toll, and of the 50 tanks available, only 15 or so managed to make it to Aven in the early hours of the morning. However, in Aven are the leading 2 tank battalions of Rommel's 7th Panzer Division, which have advanced far more rapidly than anyone at the top levels of command, French or German or hell, anyone on Earth, had expected. Rommel's speed and his ignoring all messages from his divisional headquarters have earned his force the nickname Ghost Division. After taking the town at midnight, Rommel splits his force in half and leads his 1st Battalion further west still. It's at this point that Brunneau's remaining tanks run into the 2nd Battalion. Although the French force is mainly made up of Hotchkiss 39 tanks, it does include a few of those powerful Char Bs, which have caused a lot of trouble for the Germans. They drew the Panzer Battalion that had gotten stuck in Aven into a long drawn-out firefight with many losses. Rommel had to stop his advance and send reinforcements. Under cover of darkness, Lieutenant Karl Henke, riding in a Panzer IV, thrust into the rear of the French and smashed the tracks of some Char B tanks. The nighttime firefight in the streets of Aven was decided around 4 a.m., and the last 3 tanks of the French 1st Armored Division began their retreat. If the name Karl Henke sounds familiar to you, it's because he's a member of the SS, who will eventually become the commander of Festung Breslau in the final days of the war. After stripping the title from Heinrich Himmler, Hitler will name Henke the 2nd and last Reichsfuhrer SS. That's not for another 5 years from now. Right now, after dealing with the fighting at Aven, Rommel drives through to Landrecies, a further 18 kilometers to the west. Rommel is so far in the enemy's rear that when he does run into detachments of French units, they almost don't react when Rommel's tanks drive up to them. Usually they surrender, and other times they look up hopefully and ask Rommel and his men whether they're British reinforcements. At 6 a.m., Rommel takes a bridge over the River Sambre in Landrecies, and by 6:30, his lead elements have almost reached Le Cateau. Crossing the river compromises the French plan to set up a defensive line along the Sambre. At this point, though, Rommel realizes he's left himself in quite a precarious position. He has, in fact, moved so fast that only 2 tank battalions and a handful of motorcycle platoons have managed to keep up with him. His 3rd Panzer Battalion and the reconnaissance platoon have got stuck somewhere along the way. The rest of the division, including the 2 rifle regiments, his artillery, and his headquarters, are still in Belgium, like 80 kilometers behind. They have settled down for the night behind the Maginot Line defenses Rommel broke through yesterday. Rommel also has had 0 contact with his divisional headquarters. His operations staff, well, they've desperately been trying to contact him, but Rommel, whether deliberately or otherwise, does not heed the radio messages instructing him not to advance past Aven. Eventually, about 7 a.m., Rommel decides it's time to head back and re-establish contact. He leaves the bulk of his 2 Panzer battalions and heads eastward with a small detachment. After about an hour, and having run through several groups of dazed French stragglers, he eventually runs into the rest of his division, which is just starting to advance towards Aven. This whole thing could potentially land Rommel in real hot water. I mean, he's totally disobeyed the orders from above and ignored attempts by his own divisional headquarters to communicate with him. However, It was impossible to court-martial such a successful general, so Rommel instead got the Knight's Cross. The consequences of his nighttime push seemed breathtaking. After the extended Maginot Line, he had also punched through the Sambre-Oise line behind it. In the process, the Sambre River Bridge at Landrecies fell into German hands even before the withdrawing French troops were able to set up defensive positions behind the river. The French 1st Armored Division was also wiped out once and for all. In addition, Rommel's panzers rode over some units of the 8th Infantry Division, the 4th Light Cavalry Division, the 1st Light Mechanized Division, the 1st North African Infantry Division, and the 9th Motorized Infantry Division. That's a lot. While Heinz Guderian and Rommel practiced the war of movement, further south, other German troops are getting ready to assault a fortress. The target here is the Ouvrage Laferte. It is essentially the end post of what we might call the strong Maginot Line, which, as we've covered before, ends just to the south of Sedan, although a series of blockhouses, casemates, and terrain features stretch all the way to the English Channel. Laferte itself occupies a commanding position, with a clear field of fire over the surrounding terrain. The fort comprises 2 reinforced concrete combat blocks, linked by a deep underground gallery, which is more than 20 meters below the surface. This gallery houses the living quarters, ammunition stores, and command post. The garrison numbers 107 men from the 155th Fortress Infantry Regiment, led by Lieutenant Maurice Bourguignon. Across both blocks, the armored cupolas are fitted with a mix of machine guns and 25mm and 47mm anti-tank guns. The 47mm guns in particular can penetrate the armor of both the Panzer III and the Panzer IV. Beyond Laferte itself, there are also a number of small blockhouses and casemates in the surrounding area which guard the fortress, and the men at Laferte can call in artillery support from the nearby Ouvrage Chenois and its 75mm guns. The attack at Laferte is not within German 12th Army sector. It sits across the army-level boundary and is the responsibility of Ernst Busch's 16th Army. We haven't talked about them yet, but unlike Panzer Group Kleist, 16th Army is an infantry formation. Busch has 3 corps, each with 2 divisions, and 7 in reserve for a total of 13 infantry divisions. Army High Command has a few different objectives when it comes to attacking Laferte. First, it will tie down a lot of strong French troops. Second, it also serves as something of a tactical experiment. If successful, it will be a big propaganda victory, demonstrating to both the French and German public and military that the Maginot Line is far from impenetrable. The fight for Laferte finally was played up as much as if the Battle of Verdun had to be fought a second time at this spot. So Georges, the commander-in-chief of the Allied Northeast Front, already on the afternoon of the 15th of May, had personally phoned the commanding general of 18th Corps and appealed to him with these words: "You must hold at all costs the Innor Malandry shoulder at Laferte. The whole issue of the war may depend on it." The attack actually kicked off yesterday, the 16th. The Germans, they've moved something like 250 artillery pieces here, but bombardment alone will not win this battle. The fort must be conquered up close and personal by the assault engineers. The 71st Infantry Division has trained specially for the job, and they'll use shaped charges to blow the lids off the armored cupolas. Yesterday, the German forces took Hill 226, which overlooks Laferte from the west, and just before nightfall today, they take Hill 311, driving away a battalion of the 23rd Colonial Infantry Regiment and forcing the colonial troops to abandon some of the defensive blockhouses around Laferte. Meanwhile, German 21cm mortars and 88mm anti-tank guns begin bombarding the fortress. These cannot penetrate the fortress. Believe me, we've been to Laferte. We've seen the scars left in the cupolas by the 88mm guns. They can't. The assault on Laferte will continue tomorrow, though, as will the rest of the battle, for this is where I will leave things today. We've seen friction in the German command, Rommel and his Ghost Division frightening even his own headquarters with the speed of his advance, and Charles de Gaulle showing the French army how things should be done in 1940. But even de Gaulle's attack was unable to pierce the German flanks. Is there any hope left? Will Guderian be allowed to continue driving forward once again? And what about Laferte? Will the Germans break the Maginot Line? Find out next week. it is thanks to the Time Ghost Army that we can continue to make our videos. Seriously, you guys and gals are keeping all of this going, all of these fun projects and all of this extra stuff. Today's Ardennes amigo is DG. Today's Ardennes amigo is DG Rossiter. You too can be cool and mysterious like our friend DG. And join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. And hey, if you want to see Laferte in real detail, you can check out this video from when we visited, I think it was 6 years ago. Man, time flies. Well, do not forget to subscribe. I'll see you next week.